So here's the thing about moving to Chicago in January. It's colder than a well-digger's behind in the Klondike, and nobody warns you that lake effect isn't just a fancy weather term. It's a personal attack by Mother Nature herself. I'd been at Reinhardt Industries for exactly 6 months, which meant I was still in that awkward phase where I knew where the good bathroom was, 3rd floor, executive wing, always has the fancy soap, but didn't quite have friends to eat lunch with yet. Making friends as an adult in a new city is harder than trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. My desk was tucked in a corner of the administrative pool, and I'd been perfectly happy filing reports and answering phones for Mr. Henderson in accounting. He was about as exciting as watching paint dry, but he was kind and didn't mind when I said in my southern twang things like, "I'm fixin' to grab some coffee," instead of, "I'm going to get coffee." Then Sharon Kowalski went into labor 3 weeks early. Sharon was Alexander Reinhardt's executive assistant. Alexander Reinhardt, as in the CEO of the entire company. The man whose office took up half the top floor, and whose name was literally on the building. I'd seen him exactly twice in 6 months. Once in the lobby when he'd strode past in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, and once in the elevator where I'd kept my eyes glued to the floor numbers like they were the most fascinating thing I'd ever seen. Both times my brain had short-circuited a little. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, and had the kind of face that belonged on billboards. Dark hair, brown eyes that looked like they could see straight through you, and a jaw so sharp you could probably cut glass on it. So when HR called me up to the executive floor that Friday morning, I figured I was either getting fired or someone had died. Turns out it was worse. "You'll be Mr. Reinhardt's temporary assistant until Sharon returns," Margaret from HR said, handing me a stack of files thick enough to stop a bullet. "You come highly recommended." Highly recommended? I'd been here 6 months and mostly just tried not to spill coffee on important documents. But I wasn't about to argue my way out of what had to be a significant pay bump. "I appreciate the opportunity," I said, clutching the files to my chest. "When do I start?" "Monday morning, 7 a.m. sharp. Mr. Reinhardt likes to get an early start." 7 a.m. Jiminy Christmas. I was more of a roll in at 8:30 with wet hair kind of girl. But I could adapt. Probably. I spent the entire weekend reading through Sharon's meticulously organized notes, learning Alexander Reinhardt's coffee preferences, black, no sugar, and hotter than the hinges of Hades, his meeting schedule, back-to-back from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. most days, and his list of people who were never, under any circumstances, to be put through to him, surprisingly long. By Monday morning, I was as ready as I'd ever be. I'd set 3 alarms, picked out my most professional navy dress, and even managed to wrangle my long blonde hair into something resembling a sleek bun instead of my usual messy situation. I arrived at 6:45 a.m., which I figured showed initiative. The executive floor was dead quiet, all glass and chrome and expensive-looking art that I didn't understand. Sharon's desk, my desk now, temporarily, sat right outside a set of imposing double doors with Alexander Reinhardt, CEO, etched on a brass placard. I set down my purse, smoothed my dress, and booted up the computer. So far, so good. At 6:58, the elevator dinged. I straightened in my chair, trying to look competent and professional, and like I absolutely belonged here. Alexander Reinhardt stepped out, and Lord have mercy, the man was even more devastating up close. 6-foot-something of pure masculine confidence in a navy suit that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. He was looking down at his phone, his brow furrowed in concentration. He didn't even glance my way as he strode toward his office. I opened my mouth to introduce myself. "Good morning, Mr. Reinhardt. I'm LouAnn Morrison, your temporary assistant." But what came out was more of a squeaky mornin'. He held up one finger without looking at me, the universal sign for not now. His office doors closed with a quiet click. Well, all right then. I sat back down, my cheeks burning. So much for first impressions. At 7:15, his phone line lit up. I picked up the receiver on my desk. "Yes, Mr. Reinhardt?" "Coffee." His voice was deep, crisp, and brooking no argument. "Yes, sir. Black, no sugar, and hotter than donut grease." "Oh shit, did I just say that?" There was a pause. "You have my preferences." "Yes, sir." Sharon left very detailed notes. Another pause. "Good. I have a board meeting at 8. I'll need the Martinez acquisition files." I scanned Sharon's notes. Martinez acquisition. There. I'll have them on your desk in 5 minutes. 3 would be better. The line went dead. 3 minutes. I could do 3 minutes. I flew to the file room, located the Martinez files, and speed-walked back to my desk. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. I knocked once on his door and entered without waiting for a response, because I only had 20 seconds left and I'd be damned if I was late on my first real task. He was standing by the window, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He glanced over his shoulder, and for just a second our eyes met. His were darker than I'd thought, almost black in the morning light. I set the files on his desk as quietly as possible and turned to leave. "Hold on," he said into the phone. Then, to me, "You're not Sharon." "No, sir. LouAnn Morrison. I'm filling in while Sharon's on maternity leave." He looked me over, a quick assessment that made me feel like a bug under a microscope. "How long have you been with the company?" "6 months, sir." "And they put you up here?" I couldn't tell if that was an insult or genuine curiosity. I lifted my chin. "I'm a quick learner." Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe? But it was gone before I could be sure. "We'll see. That'll be all." I nodded and left, closing the door behind me. 3 hours later, I was starting to think I'd bitten off more than I could chew. Alexander Reinhardt didn't walk. He moved like a man on a mission at all times. He went through coffee like it was water. His calendar was a nightmare of overlapping meetings and conference calls. And he had a habit of firing off instructions at rapid speed, assuming I'd just keep up. Which I did, barely. By 11 a.m., I was juggling 3 phone calls, trying to reschedule a lunch meeting, and searching for a file he needed 5 minutes ago when I realized I'd missed something. The coffee. He'd asked for a second cup at 10:30, and I'd gotten distracted by a vendor calling about a delayed shipment. I grabbed the carafe from the small kitchen area behind my desk and poured a cup. It wasn't as hot as a freshly brewed cup, but close enough. I knocked and entered his office. He was at his desk, typing furiously, his jaw tight. He didn't look up. "Your coffee, Mr. Reinhardt." "I asked for that 20 minutes ago." "I know, I apologize. It won't happen again." He finally looked up, and I swear there was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, like he'd expected me to make excuses. "See that it doesn't." I set the cup on his desk and turned to leave. He picked up the cup, took a sip, and set it back down. "It's cold." Cold? Wow, he really did like his coffee hot enough to scald a lizard. "I'll make a fresh cup immediately." "Don't bother. Just get it right next time." My temper flared, hot and quick. I'd been running around like a chicken with my head cut off all morning, and he was complaining about coffee that was 2 degrees too cool, but I swallowed it down, nodded, and left. By lunchtime, I was madder than a wet hen. I grabbed my purse and headed for the elevator, fully intending to eat my sad desk salad in the lobby, where I could silently curse Alexander Reinhardt's name without risk of him overhearing. The elevator doors opened, and naturally, because the universe loved to mess with me, he was inside. We stared at each other. "Going down?" he asked. "Yes, sir." I stepped in, keeping as much distance between us as the small space allowed. The doors closed. Silence. The elevator descended 1 floor. 2 floors. 3. "You're upset," he said. I kept my eyes on the floor numbers. "No, sir." "You're a terrible liar." 4 floors. 5. "With all due respect, Mr. Reinhardt, I'm just trying to do my job." "Trying?" he corrected. I looked at him then, my temper snapping its leash. "Excuse me? You said tryin'." "The word is trying." Oh, he did not just correct my grammar. "I'm aware of how to speak, sir. Where I come from, we drop the G sometimes. It's called a colloquialism." His mouth twitched. Actually twitched, like he was fighting a smile. "Where are you from?" "Georgia, originally." "That explains the fixin' to I heard earlier." The elevator dinged. "Lobby." I stepped out, my cheeks flaming. "If you'll excuse me, I'm fixin' to eat my lunch now." I didn't wait for a response. I just walked away, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind me, I could have sworn I heard him laugh.
I didn't laugh. I never laughed at work. It wasn't professional, and I had a reputation to maintain. But LouAnn Morrison, with her big blue eyes, her southern drawl, and her very obvious irritation, had almost made me break that rule. I watched her walk away, her blonde hair slipping out of its bun, her hips swaying in a way that was entirely distracting. She was all curves and fire, and she'd looked at me like she wanted to pour that coffee over my head instead of serving it. I couldn't remember the last time someone had challenged me, even in such a small way. Sharon was competent, efficient, and utterly unflappable. She anticipated my needs, kept my schedule running like clockwork, and never, ever showed emotion. LouAnn Morrison was the opposite. She wore every feeling on her face, and she had a mouth on her when pushed. I liked it, which was inconvenient. I didn't have time for distractions. Reinhardt Industries was in the middle of a major acquisition, and I had a board of directors breathing down my neck. The last thing I needed was to be thinking about my temporary assistant's legs, or her voice, or the way she'd said with all due respect, like she'd wanted to follow it with something significantly less respectful. I stepped back into the elevator and hit the button for the executive floor. Focus, Reinhardt. But when I returned to my office and saw the fresh cup of coffee waiting on my desk, perfectly heated, I'd bet, I couldn't help but smile.
I lasted until 5 before I cracked. I'd spent the entire afternoon answering emails, fielding calls, and trying not to think about the fact that Alexander Reinhardt had corrected my grammar like I was a child. When the clock finally hit 5, I grabbed my coat and purse and practically ran for the elevator. "Miss Morrison?" I froze, turned. He was standing in his doorway, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that had no business being that distracting. "Yes, Mr. Reinhardt? Good work today?" I blinked. "Sir, you kept up. That's more than most people manage on their first day." "Was that a compliment?" "Thank you," I said carefully. He nodded once and disappeared back into his office. I stood there for a long moment, completely confused. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside. And as the doors closed, I realized I was smiling. Well, butter my buns and call me a biscuit. Maybe this job wouldn't be so bad after all.
She spilled coffee on me. Not just a little splash, either. A full, scalding cup of black coffee all down the front of my white shirt and tie. It happened on her 3rd day. I'd been standing at her desk, reviewing the updated schedule for the week, when she'd turned too quickly with the carafe in hand. The whole thing had gone flying, and the next thing I knew, I was drenched. "Oh my, Jiminy Christmas. Mr. Reinhardt, I am so sorry." She'd grabbed a box of tissues and started frantically dabbing at my chest, her face the color of a tomato, her hands shaking. And I just stood there frozen because LouAnn Morrison was touching me and my brain had apparently decided to shut down completely. I'll get you a towel or a new shirt. Do you have a spare shirt? Of course you have a spare shirt. Miss Morrison. She stopped mid-dab, her blue eyes wide and horrified. "It's fine." "It's not fine. You're soaked. And I've ruined your tie. And oh Lord, is that silk? That's silk, isn't it? I'll pay for it. I'll pay for all of it. LouAnn." She froze at the sound of her first name. I took the tissues from her hand, our fingers brushing. "Breathe." She sucked in a shaky breath. "It was an accident. I have a spare shirt in my office. The tie is replaceable." "You're fine." "I'm fine?" she squeaked. "You're the one covered in coffee." I almost smiled. Almost. "Go get another cup." She nodded, still looking like she might cry or combust or both, and hurried off to the kitchen. I went into my office, peeled off my ruined shirt and tie, and pulled the spare from the closet behind my desk. When I emerged 10 minutes later, she was sitting at her desk with a fresh cup of coffee, her hands folded in her lap, looking like she was waiting for execution. "Here," she said quietly, holding out the cup. I took it, sipped, perfect temperature. "Better," I said. "I really am sorry, Mr. Reinhardt. Forget it." But I didn't forget it. Not the coffee, not the feel of her hands on my chest, and definitely not the way she'd looked at me like I was the most terrifying and fascinating thing she'd ever seen. The problem, and it was a problem, was that I was starting to look at her the same way.
Loving this story? Please help me to know that I have hit the mark by tapping that like button. And don't miss the next one. Be sure to subscribe.
I couldn't stop running into him. And I mean that literally. Over the next 2 weeks, I ran into Alexander Reinhardt more times than should have been statistically possible. There was the elevator incident where I'd been balancing a stack of files and walked straight into his back when he'd stopped to hold the door for someone. Files everywhere. Me on my behind. Him staring down at me with that unreadable expression. There was the coffee shop incident where I'd gone to grab lunch and he'd been there, sitting in a corner booth with his laptop. Our eyes had met. He'd nodded. I'd fled. There was the parking garage incident where I'd been trying to parallel park my ancient Honda Civic, and he'd walked past just in time to see me clip the bumper of the car behind me. He hadn't said a word, just raised one eyebrow and kept walking. I'd wanted to die. And then there was the stairwell incident. Because I had taken to using the stairs in an effort to avoid getting trapped in an elevator with him. Again. I'd been hurrying down from the executive floor, already late for a meeting with HR, when I tripped on the second-to-last step and gone flying forward, right into Alexander Reinhardt's arms. Of course he was in the stairwell, on the exact same floor as me, and at the exact same time, because that is just how the universe operates. He'd caught me like I weighed nothing, his hands gripping my waist, steadying me against his chest. For a second, neither of us moved. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else, something clean and masculine that made my brain go foggy. "You all right?" His voice was low, rough. I looked up. Big mistake. His face was inches from mine, his dark eyes locked on my mouth. Yes, sorry. I'm clumsier than a blind cat in a dog pound," I said with a little nervous laugh. His lips twitched. "That's a new one." "My Mima used to say it," I explained quickly. "Your Mima?" he said in a low, questioning voice. "Mima is a southern name for grandmother," I said. He still hadn't let me go. His hands were warm through the fabric of my dress, his thumbs resting just above my hip bones. "You should watch your step, Miss Morrison." "I know, I will. Thank you." He released me slowly, like he was reluctant. I smoothed my dress, my heart hammering. I have a meeting. You're going the wrong way," I blinked. "What?" "HR is on the 5th floor. You're headed to the 3rd. Right, of course. Because my brain had completely abandoned ship. Right, 5th floor, thank you." I turned and practically ran back up the stairs, my cheeks on fire. Behind me I heard him say, "Elevators are faster." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to remember how to breathe.
I was losing my mind. That was the only explanation. LouAnn Morrison had been working for me for 2 weeks, and I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she said "fixin' to" instead of "going to." The way she bit her bottom lip when she was concentrating. The way her dresses hugged her curves in a way that made it physically difficult to focus during meetings. I'd had her in my arms in that stairwell, and it had taken every ounce of self-control not to pull her closer. To see if her mouth tasted as sweet as it looked. This was insane. She was my assistant. Temporary or not, she worked for me. There were rules, policies. HR would have my head. And yet, I found myself looking for excuses to call her into my office, to watch her take notes, her pen moving in quick, precise strokes, to listen to her answer, the phone in that soft drawl that made me think of summer nights and front porch swings. I was in trouble. Deep, deep trouble.
"You've got it bad." I looked up from my salad to find my new friend and fellow admin Keisha grinning at me from across the break room table. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said primly. "Girl, please. You've been sighing into your food for 10 minutes, and women only do that when they're thinking about a man." "I don't sigh." "You absolutely sigh, so who is he?" I stabbed a cherry tomato with more force than necessary. "There's no he." Keisha leaned forward, her dark eyes sparkling. "Is it someone in the office? Oh my gosh, is it Brad from IT? He's been asking about you." "It's not Brad. Then who?" I hesitated. Keisha was the closest thing I had to a friend in Chicago, but could I really tell her I was developing feelings for the CEO, the man who signed her paychecks? "It's complicated," I said finally. "Honey, it's always complicated." "Spill," I sighed. Again. "He's out of my league. No such thing. There is when he's rich, successful, and looks like he walked off the cover of a magazine." Keisha's eyes went wide. "Oh my gosh. It's Reinhardt, isn't it?" My silence was answer enough. "LouAnn." I know it's ridiculous. He probably doesn't even see me as a person. I'm just the girl who brings him coffee and files." "Does he look at you?" I thought about the stairwell, the way his eyes had dropped to my mouth. "Sometimes." "How does he look at you? Like he's trying to figure out a puzzle?" Keisha sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Girl, you need to do something about this." "Like what? Quit my job and move to Canada? Or, crazy thought, you could flirt with him." I nearly choked on my water. Flirt with Alexander Reinhardt? Are you out of your mind? Why not? Because he's my boss. Temporarily. That doesn't make it better. You won't know unless you try. I shook my head. This conversation is over. But as I walked back to my desk, I couldn't help wondering, what if? The Martinez acquisition was going to kill me. That's what I decided at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday when I was still at my desk, my eyes crossing from staring at spreadsheets, while Alexander paced his office on a conference call with the legal team. He'd pulled me into the project 3 days ago with zero warning. I need someone I can trust to keep this organized, he'd said, dropping a box of files on my desk. Sharon always handled the sensitive acquisitions. You'll do the same. But I don't know anything about. You'll learn. We have 1 week to finalize the terms. I'll need you here late most nights. And that was that. So now I was learning corporate acquisitions on the fly, organizing documents, sitting in on strategy meetings, and trying very hard not to notice how good Alexander looked when he rolled up his sleeves and loosened his tie. Tonight, he'd shed his jacket entirely. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his hair slightly mussed from running his hands through it. He looked human, approachable, dangerous. Miss Morrison, I jumped. He was standing in his doorway, watching me. Yes? I need you in here. We're reviewing the final terms. I grabbed my notepad and followed him into his office. The space smelled like coffee and the faint spice of his cologne. His desk was covered in papers, and the city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He settled into his own chair, his eyes on me. How are you holding up? Fine, I lied. You look tired. So do you. The words were out before I could stop them. I bit my lip. But he just smiled. Actually smiled, a real one that made my stomach flip. Fair point. He slid a document across the desk. Walk me through the financials one more time. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. We spent the next hour going over numbers, projections, risk assessments. He asked questions, I answered. We debated strategy. At some point, he ordered food, Chinese takeout that arrived in little white boxes, and we ate at his desk, the conversation shifting from work to other things. Why Chicago? He asked, stabbing a piece of orange chicken with his fork. Adventure, I said. I wanted to see what life was like outside of Georgia. And it's colder. He laughed, and a sound did something dangerous to my heart. What about you? I asked before I could think better of it. Why stay in Chicago? You could run the company from anywhere. Family, he said simply. My brother's here. The business is here. It's home. Do you like it, running the company? He considered the question. I like the challenge. I like building something. But sometimes... He trailed off. Sometimes what? Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to walk away. To do something that didn't come with the weight of 100-year legacy. I stared at him. This wasn't the Alexander Reinhardt I knew, the one who barked orders and expected perfection. This was someone else. Someone real. What would you do? I asked softly. I don't know. Travel, maybe. See the world without a schedule. That sounds nice. What about you? What would you do if you could do anything? Write, I said without thinking. Write what? Romance novels. I felt my cheeks heat. I know it's silly. It's not silly. Our eyes met, and the air between us shifted. Charged. LouAnn? His phone rang. He cursed under his breath and answered it. Reinhardt. I stood, suddenly needing space, and carried my empty takeout container to the small trash can by the window. When I turned back, he was watching me, the phone still pressed to his ear. Tomorrow, he said into the phone, his eyes never leaving mine. We'll finalize it tomorrow. He hung up. Silence. It's late, he said finally. You should go home. What about you? I'll be here a while longer. I wanted to argue, to tell him he needed sleep too, but I just nodded and gathered my things. At the door, I paused. Mr. Reinhardt? Yes? You'd be good at whatever you choose to do, if you ever decided to, that is. I left before he could respond.
She was going to ruin me. I'd known it the moment she'd said romance novels with that shy smile, like she was confessing something secret. I wanted to know everything, what she wrote about, what she dreamed about, what made her laugh, and what made her cry. And I wanted to kiss her. I'd wanted to kiss her since the stairwell, maybe before, but she was my assistant and I was her boss, and crossing that line would be a catastrophic mistake. Except I'd seen the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, like she was thinking the same dangerous thoughts I was. The Martinez deal closed on Friday. We'd done it. 1 week, countless late nights, and the acquisition was ours. The board was thrilled. My brother called to congratulate me. The legal team sent champagne, and all I could think about was LouAnn, sitting across from me in my office, her blue eye bright with exhaustion and triumph. "We did it," she said, laughing. "You did it," I corrected. "I couldn't have pulled this together without you." She ducked her head, embarrassed. "I just did my job." "You did more than that." She looked up and the space between us felt electric. I stood, walked around the desk, stopped in front of her chair. She tilted her head back to look at me, her lips parted. "LouAnn." "Yes?" I should have stepped back, should have put distance between us. Instead, I reached out and tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. She inhaled sharply. "Thank you," I said quietly. "You're welcome." Neither of us moved. My phone buzzed. Once, twice. Reality crashed back in. I stepped back and the moment shattered. "You should take Monday off," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "You've earned it." "Oh, okay." She stood, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. "LouAnn," she turned. "Have a good weekend." She smiled, soft and sweet. "You too, Mr. Reinhardt." And then she was gone. I sank into my chair and scrubbed my hands over my face. I was so screwed.
I floated through the weekend on a cloud of confusion and hope. He touched me. Alexander Reinhardt had tucked my hair behind my ear like it was the most natural thing in the world, and he'd looked at me like I was something precious. Maybe Keisha was right. Maybe I should do something. Monday morning, because if I waited until Tuesday, I would probably chicken out, I came back to work with a plan. I'd be a little bolder. A little braver. I'd flirt. Just enough to see if he'd flirt back. Just enough to know if the feelings I was developing for him, he might also be having for me. I walked into the executive floor at 7 a.m. sharp, my heart pounding, and stopped dead. Because there, standing at my desk, laughing at something Alexander said, was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. She was tall, model tall, with long dark hair, sharp cheekbones, and legs that went on for days. She wore a sleek black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and she had her hand on Alexander's arm. She was everything I was not. He was smiling at her. Actually smiling. "Oh, darling, you're always so serious," she said in a crisp British accent. "That's why I flew all this way. To remind you how to have fun." My stomach dropped. Alexander looked up and saw me. The smile faded. "Miss Morrison, I thought you were taking today off?" he said in a low voice. Yes. I stumbled over my words as my brain tried to catch up with what I was seeing. "LouAnn, this is Catherine Hawthorne." "Catherine, this is my assistant, LouAnn Morrison." Catherine turned to me, her gaze sweeping over me in a quick, dismissive assessment. "How lovely. You're very quaint." Quaint. Like I was a souvenir from a country gift shop. "Nice to meet you." I managed. "Catherine's visiting from London," Alexander said, and I couldn't read his expression. "She'll be in town for a few days." "A few days. I should let y'all catch up," I said, my voice tight. "Excuse me." I walked past them to the break room, my vision blurring. Girlfriend. He had a girlfriend. And I'd been stupid enough to think. I pressed my hands to the counter, breathing hard. Well, butter my buns and call me a biscuit. I was an idiot.
I'd forgotten Catherine was coming. That wasn't entirely true. I'd known she was flying in, but I'd assumed she'd go straight to her hotel and call me later. I hadn't expected her to show up at my office at 7 in the morning, looking like she'd stepped off a runway. And I definitely hadn't expected LouAnn to walk in and see us together. The look on her face, shock, hurt, something that made my chest tighten, had nearly undone me. "So that's your new assistant, Catherine said, sipping the coffee LouAnn had silently delivered before disappearing back to her desk. She's not quite what I pictured. What did you picture? Someone less soft. I didn't respond. I couldn't because soft was exactly the word I'd used to describe LouAnn, and hearing it from Catherine felt like an insult. Darling, are you even listening? I looked at Catherine, tall, elegant, perfectly composed. We'd been seeing each other on and off for 5 years, but it had never been serious. She traveled constantly for work. I was married to mine, and we'd fallen into an easy pattern of dinner when she was in town, the occasional weekend away, nothing more. I'd already decided to end it, weeks ago actually, before I'd even met LouAnn. Catherine deserved someone who could give her more than I was willing to offer, and I deserved to stop pretending I was satisfied with a relationship that existed in name only. But I'd wanted to do it in person, to be respectful. I'm listening, I said. Good, because I was thinking we could do dinner tonight. There's a new place in River North I'm dying to try. Catherine, and tomorrow we could drive up to the lake house. You've been promising to take me there for ages. We need to talk. She set down her coffee cup, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the porcelain. That sounds ominous. It's not. I just think... LouAnn's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Reinhardt, your 9 o'clock is here. Saved by the bell, or damned by it. We'll talk later, I said to Catherine. She smiled, unbothered. Of course, darling, I'll see you tonight. She kissed my cheek and left, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I stood there for a moment staring at the door. Then I walked out to LouAnn's desk. She was typing furiously, her jaw tight. Miss Morrison, your 9 o'clock is in the conference room, she said without looking up. LouAnn, is there something else you need, Mr. Reinhardt? Her tone was professional, polite, and completely devoid of the warmth I'd grown used to. No, I said finally. That'll be all. I walked away, feeling like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life.
I made it through the day by sheer force of will. Every time Catherine called, and she called a lot, I answered with a smile in my voice and transferred her to Alexander without a word. Every time he looked at me, I looked away. I was professional, efficient, the perfect assistant, and I was dying inside. By 5 o'clock, I was ready to run. Miss Morrison. I didn't turn around, just kept packing my bag. Yes, Mr. Reinhardt? I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. You have a girlfriend. That's your business, not mine. It's not that simple. I finally looked at him. He was standing in his doorway, his tie loosened, his expression unreadable. Seems pretty simple to me, I said. Catherine and I don't need to hear this. LouAnn, have a good evening, Mr. Reinhardt. I grabbed my coat and walked to the elevator, my heels clicking loudly in the silence. He didn't follow. I told myself that was a good thing.
Dinner with Catherine was a disaster. She talked about Fashion Week, about a shoot in Paris, about people I didn't know and didn't care about. And all I could think about was LouAnn's face when she'd said, "Seems pretty simple to me." "You're distracted," Catherine said, setting down her wine glass. "I'm tired." "You're always tired." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "What's really going on, Alex?" I met her gaze. "I think we should talk." "About us," she sighed. "Finally." I blinked. "What?" "Darling, I've been waiting for you to say something for months. We're not working, and we haven't been for a long time." "You knew?" "Of course I knew. I'm not blind." She smiled, but it was sad. "We're friends who occasionally sleep together. That's not a relationship. I'm sorry. Don't be. I should have ended this ages ago, but I kept hoping you'd surprise me. Fall madly in love, sweep me off my feet, all that nonsense." She shook her head. "But you're not that kind of man, are you?" I thought of LouAnn, the way my chest tightened when she smiled, the way I looked for excuses to be near her. "Maybe I am," I said quietly. Catherine's eyes widened. "Oh my gosh, there's someone else." "No, yes, it's complicated." "Who is she?" "It doesn't matter." "It's the assistant, isn't it? The blonde, I didn't answer. Catherine laughed, sharp and bright. "Well, I'll be damned. Alexander Reinhardt, felled by a girl from Georgia." "How did you—" "The accent, darling. It's adorable." She stood, gathering her purse. "I'll be out of town by tomorrow. I hope you know what you're doing." "I don't." "Good. That means it's real." She kissed my cheek and left. I sat there alone, staring at my untouched steak, and wondered if LouAnn would even speak to me again.
I cried the whole way home. Big, ugly tears that ruined my mascara and made my chest ache. I'd been so stupid. So stupid. Of course, Alexander Reinhardt had a girlfriend. A gorgeous, sophisticated, perfect girlfriend who probably never spilled coffee or said y'all or tripped over her own feet. I'd let myself believe, just for a moment, that he saw me as more than his assistant. But I was wrong. I called Keisha the second I got to my apartment. "He has a girlfriend," I said, my voice thick. "What? Who?" "Alexander. Her name is Catherine. She's British and beautiful and everything I'm not." "LouAnn, I'm going home." "What?" "To Georgia. I can't stay here, Keisha. I can't see him every day and pretend like I don't." I broke off, choking on the words. "Like you don't..." "What?" "Like I don't love him." Silence. "Oh, honey," Keisha said softly, "I need to leave. Just for a few days. Clear my head." "Does he know that I love him?" "No, and he's not gonna. I meant, does he know you're leaving?" "I'll email HR, say it's a family emergency." "LouAnn, running away won't fix this." "I'm not running away. I'm strategically retreating." "That's the same thing." "Goodbye, Keisha." I hung up, booked a flight for the next morning, and started packing.
She was gone. I arrived at the office Friday morning to find her desk empty, her computer dark. "Where's Miss Morrison?" I asked Margaret from HR when she came by with paperwork. She requested emergency leave. Family matter. What kind of family matter? I'm not at liberty to say, Mr. Reinhardt. I called her cell. It went straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. By noon, I was ready to put my fist through a wall. "You look terrible," my brother said, leaning against my office door frame. James was 2 years older, calmer, better with people. He handled the financial side of the business while I dealt with operations and strategy. "I'm fine." "You're pacing. You only pace when something's wrong." "It's nothing." "Is this about the acquisition? Because that went perfectly." "It's not about the acquisition." James raised an eyebrow. "Then what?" I stopped pacing, looked at him. "I think I did something incredibly stupid." "How stupid are we talking?" "I'm in love with my assistant." James blinked. Then he started laughing. "This isn't funny. It's a little funny. You, Mr. I don't have time for relationships, in love with your assistant? Temporary assistant. Does she know?" "No. And now she's gone." "Gone where?" "I don't know. She requested emergency leave and won't answer my calls." James sobered. "What did you do?" "Catherine showed up." "Ah, and the assistant saw?" "Yes." "Did you explain?" "I tried. She wouldn't listen." "So go after her." "I don't know where she is." James pulled out his phone. "Give me 5 minutes." "What are you said?" "I have friends in HR. They owe me favors." 10 minutes later, I had an address in Georgia, a small town called Millford, population 3,000. "She's staying with her grandmother," James said. "Now go." "I can't just leave." "Yes, you can. I'll handle things here. Go get your girl." I stared at him. Then I grabbed my coat and left.
Being home was exactly what I needed. Mima's house was the same as it had always been. White clapboard with a wraparound porch, rocking chairs, and flowers everywhere. My great-aunt Bertie was there too, as sharp and opinionated as ever. "You look like something," the cat dragged in. Bertie said when I arrived. "Thanks, Aunt Bertie. I missed you too." Mima pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender and vanilla. "What happened, sugar?" And I told them. Everything. When I finished, Mima patted my hand. "Sounds like you're running." "I'm not running. I'm regrouping." "That's just a fancy word for running," Bertie said, rocking in her chair. "You always did have a yellow streak." "I do not." "You're here instead of there, ain't you?" I opened my mouth to argue, closed it. "She's right," Mima said gently. "You can't run from your feelings, LouAnn. You gotta face them head on. What if he doesn't feel the same? Then you'll know. But at least you won't spend the rest of your life wondering, what if?" I sank into the porch swing, my chest tight. "I don't know if I can." "Sure you can," Bertie said. "You're a Morrison. We don't quit." "Even when it hurts?" "Especially when it hurts. I closed my eyes, the swing creaking beneath me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was running. But I didn't know how to stop.
Millford, Georgia was the smallest town I'd ever seen. One stoplight, a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s, a general store with a handwritten sign in the window advertising fresh peaches. It was charming, quaint, and I stood out like a sore thumb in my suit and rental car. I found the address James had given me easily enough, a white house with a porch full of flowers and two elderly women sitting in rocking chairs watching me like hawks. I parked and got out, suddenly aware that I hadn't thought this through. "Can we help you?" the taller of the two women asked, her voice sharp. "I'm looking for LouAnn Morrison." "And who might you be?" "Alexander Reinhardt. I'm her—" What was I? Her boss? The man who'd screwed everything up. I'm her employer. The two women exchanged a look. "He's the one," the shorter woman said. I figured. I climbed the porch steps, my heart pounding. "Is she here?" "She is." "Can I speak with her?" "Depends." "On whether you're here to hurt her or help her." I met the taller woman's gaze. "I'm here to apologize." She studied me for a long moment, then she stood. "I'm Bertie. This is her meemaw, Dorothy. You got 5 minutes." She disappeared into the house. Dorothy stayed in her rocking chair watching me. "You love her?" she asked. The question caught me off guard. "Yeah. You tell her that? Not yet. Why not? I didn't realize it until she was gone." Dorothy nodded slowly. "Men are slower than molasses when it comes to their feelings, but you're here now, so I suppose that's something." The screen door opened, and there was LouAnn. She wore cut-off jeans and a faded t-shirt, her hair in a messy ponytail, her feet bare. She looked beautiful. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. "I came to talk." "We don't have anything to talk about." "LouAnn!" "You should go, Mr. Reinhardt." She turned to leave, and I did the only thing I could think of. I stepped forward, blocking her path. "Move!" "Not until you listen." Her blue eyes flashed. "You can't just show up here and expect—" "I ended it with Catherine. It's over." She froze. "It was over before she even arrived," I continued. "I'd already decided to break up with her. I just wanted to do it in person." "That's not my business." "It is your business, because the reason I ended it is you." Her breath hitched. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about you," I said, my voice low. "The way you say "fixin' to." The way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. The way you look at me like I'm not just a name on a building. Alexander, I'm in love with you, LouAnn." The words hung in the air between us. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I've never meant anything more in my life." Tears welled in her eyes. You can't come down here and say things like that and expect—" "I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know." She wiped at her eyes, her hands shaking. "You hurt me. I know, I'm sorry. I thought we were building something. And then she showed up and I felt like such a fool." "You're not a fool. I'm the fool. I should have told you about Catherine from the beginning. I should have told you how I felt before it got this complicated." She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. "What do you want from me, Alexander?" "A chance. Just a chance to prove that this is real." From the porch, Bertie called out, "If you're going to keep yapping, at least come inside. You're letting the bugs in." LouAnn laughed, watery and broken, and I felt a flicker of hope.
I should have slammed the door in his face. I should have told him to get back in his fancy rental car and drive all the way back to Chicago. But I didn't. Because he'd said he loved me. Alexander Reinhardt, CEO, control freak, the man who'd made my life a beautiful, chaotic mess for the past month, had driven all the way to Georgia to tell me he loved me. And now he was sitting in my meemaw's living room, perched on the floral sofa like he'd never been more out of place in his life, while Bertie and meemaw grilled him like he was applying for a job. "So you're the one who's been making our LouAnn cry," Bertie said, her arms crossed. "Aunt Bertie," I started. "Hush, I'm talking to him." She turned back to Alexander. "Well?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice steady. "I am, and I'm here to make it right." "How do you plan to do that?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Bertie sniffed. "Pretty words, let's see if you mean 'em." Meemaw, bless her heart, was gentler. Would you like some sweet tea, Mr. Reinhardt? Please, and it's Alexander. She smiled. Alexander it is. She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me alone with Alexander and Bertie. You got a lot of nerve, Bertie said, showing up here like some kind of hero. I'm not a hero, Alexander said. I'm just a man who made a mistake. A big one. Yes, ma'am. Bertie's eyes narrowed. You hurt her again, and I'll tan your hide. You understand me? Yes, ma'am. She nodded, satisfied, and stood. I'm going to help Dorothy with the tea. You two talk. She left, and suddenly it was just the two of us. Alexander looked at me, his dark eyes intense. I meant what I said. I'm in love with you. My heart stuttered. You can't just say that and expect everything to be okay. I know. I don't even know if I can trust you. I know that too. So what do we do? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Let me prove it to you. Give me a chance to show you that I'm serious. How? However you want. Dinner, coffee, a walk, anything. I bit my lip, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, but the other part, the part that had been hurt, was scared. 5 dates, I said finally. He blinked. What? You want a chance? Fine. 5 dates. Over 2 weeks. And they have to be here, in Millford, not in Chicago, where you're comfortable and in control. Here, where you're out of your element. A slow smile spread across his face. Deal. And if after 5 dates I still don't think this is gonna work, you let me go. No arguments, no grand gestures. You just walk away. The smile faded. And if after 5 dates you think it will work, then we'll figure it out. He stood, closing the distance between us, and held out his hand. Deal. I took it, and the warmth of his palm against mine sent a shiver down my spine. Where are you staying? I asked. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Of course he hadn't. Before I could suggest the motel on Route 9, Meemaw bustled back in with a tray of sweet tea. Oh, you'll stay here, of course, she said brightly. I choked on air. What? We have the guest room all made up. No sense in you driving all over creation looking for a place to sleep. Meemaw, I don't think. It's settled. She beamed at Alexander. You'll stay with us. Alexander looked at me, and I could see the laughter in his eyes. This was going to be a disaster.
I'd stayed in 5-star hotels all over the world. I'd slept in luxury suites with Egyptian cotton sheets and room service at the touch of a button. But I'd never stayed anywhere quite like Dorothy Morrison's guest room. The bed was a 4-poster with a handmade quilt. The walls were covered in floral wallpaper. There was a doily on the nightstand and a cross-stitch sampler that read, "Bless this mess," hanging above the dresser. It was perfect. I set down my overnight bag, hastily packed at a drugstore on the way here, and sat on the bed. The springs creaked. A knock on the door. "Come in," I called. LouAnn poked her head in, her expression somewhere between amused and mortified. "You okay?" "Fine." "Meemaw tends to steamroll people if you want to stay at the motel." I'm staying here." She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. "You don't have to do this, you know. The dates, the staying here. You could just go back to Chicago and we could pretend this never happened." "Is that what you want?" She hesitated. "No." "Then I'm not going anywhere." She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the war in her eyes, hope and fear, tangled together. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay." She turned to leave, then paused. "Dinner's at 6. Meemaw's making pot roast. I'll be there." She smiled, small and tentative, and left. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered what the hell I'd gotten myself into.
Dinner was awkward, not because of Alexander. He was surprisingly charming, answering Meemaw and Bertie's questions with patience and even laughing at Bertie's sharp observations. It was awkward because I couldn't stop staring at him. He'd changed into jeans and a casual button-down, and he looked different, relaxed, human. "So, Alexander," Bertie said, spearing a piece of roast with her fork, "what exactly are your intentions with our LouAnn?" "Aunt Bertie," I gasped. "It's a fair question." Alexander didn't miss a beat. "My intention is to spend the next 2 weeks proving to her that I'm worth taking a chance on." Bertie nodded, satisfied. "Good answer." Meemaw patted his hand. "We're glad you're here, Alexander. LouAnn's been walking." Around like a sad puppy ever since she got home. I have not. You absolutely have, Bertie said, mopin' and sighin' and starrin' out the window like some kind of tragic heroine. I wanted to sink through the floor. Alexander's eyes met mine across the table, and I saw the warmth there, the tenderness. I'm sorry for that, he said quietly. You should be, Bertie said. Now pass the potatoes. After dinner, I walked Alexander out to the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The air smelled like honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. This is nice, he said, leaning against the railing. What is? This. Being here. It's quiet. Too quiet for you? He looked at me. No, it's perfect. My heart did a little flip. So? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. When's our first date? Tomorrow. If that works for you. What did you have in mind? He smiled. You'll see.
I woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of laughter. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then it came back to me. Millford. LouAnn's grandmother's house, the guest room with the creaky bed and the cross-stitch sampler. I pulled on jeans and a t-shirt and headed downstairs. The kitchen was warm and bright, sunlight streaming through the windows. Dorothy was at the stove, Bertie was reading the newspaper, and LouAnn was sitting at the table in pajama shorts and a tank top, her hair a messy halo around her face. She looked up when I walked in, and her cheeks flushed. "Mornin'," she said. "Morning?" "Coffee's on the counter," Dorothy said without turning around. "Help yourself." I poured a cup and sat down across from LouAnn. "Sleep well?" she asked. "Surprisingly, yes." Bertie snorted from behind her newspaper. "That bed's older than dirt. I'm amazed you didn't wake up with a backache." "It was comfortable." "Liar." LouAnn bit back a smile. Breakfast was a chaotic, wonderful affair. Scrambled eggs, bacon, biscuits with homemade jam, and more sweet tea than I'd ever consumed in my life. "So," Dorothy said, refilling my coffee cup, "what are you two doing today?" "I'm taking LouAnn on our first date," I said. "Where to?" I looked at LouAnn. "That depends. What's your favorite place in Millford?" She blinked. "My favorite place?" "Yes." She thought for a moment. "The lake. There's a little spot on the north shore where the willow trees grow right down to the water. I used to go there when I was a kid. Then that's where we're going."
I couldn't believe this was happening. Alexander Reinhardt, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, was standing in my Mima's kitchen, eating biscuits and asking me about my favorite childhood spot. It felt like a dream. We drove to the lake in his rental car, the windows down, country music playing softly on the radio. "I didn't peg you for a country music fan," I said. "I'm not. But when in Rome," I laughed. "You're trying. Awful hard to fit in. Is it working?" "Maybe." He smiled and my stomach flipped. The lake was beautiful. Calm and blue, surrounded by trees. I led him to the spot under the willows, where the ground was soft and the water lapped gently at the shore. We sat down, and for a while neither of us spoke. "This is nice," he said finally. "It is. Tell me about growing up here." So I did. I told him about summers spent swimming in the lake, about Mima teaching me to bake, about Bertie's no-nonsense advice and the way the whole town knew everyone's business. He listened. Really listened, his eyes never leaving my face. "What about you?" I asked. "What was it like growing up with money?" He was quiet for a moment. "Lonely," he said finally. "Lonely?" "My parents were always working. My brother and I were raised by nannies. We had everything we could ever want, except time with the people we loved." My chest tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It made me who I am." "And who's that?" He looked at me, his gaze intense. "Someone who's learning that what I want most can't be bought." The air between us shifted, charged. "Alexander, I know this is just the first date," he said, his voice low, "and I know I don't have the right to ask for more, but I need you to know that you're the most real thing I've felt in years. I couldn't breathe. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Not yet." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, just like he had in his office. But this time, there was no phone to interrupt. No board meeting. No Catherine. Just us. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. My heart stopped. Yes. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to change my mind. I didn't. His lips met mine, soft and warm and perfect. And the world fell away.
Kissing LouAnn was like coming home. She tasted like sweet tea and sunshine, and when she sighed against my mouth, something in my chest cracked open. I'd kissed other women. Of course I had. But this was different. This mattered. I pulled back, resting my forehead against hers. "Worth the wait." She laughed, breathless. "That was some first date. We aim to please." She smiled, and I kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the feel of her in my arms. When we finally pulled apart, the sun was high in the sky, and I realized I'd never been this happy. "4 more dates," she said, her voice teasing. "4 more chances to convince you." "You're doing a pretty good job so far." "Good, because I'm just getting started."
The second date was a disaster. Not because of Alexander, he was perfect. It was because he tried to take me to the fanciest restaurant within 50 miles, and I showed up in a sundress while he wore a suit. "You're overdressed," I said, biting back a laugh. He looked down at himself. I thought, this is Millford, not Chicago. We don't do fancy here. To his credit, he didn't argue. He just loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and followed me to the diner on Main Street. "This is more like it," I said, sliding into a booth. He looked around at the checkered floors, the jukebox in the corner, the waitress with the beehive hairdo. "It's very retro. It's very Millford," he smiled. "I like it." We ordered burgers and milkshakes, and I watched him try to figure out how to eat a burger that was too big for his hands. "You're struggling," I said. "I'm not." "You are." He took a massive bite, ketchup dripping down his chin, and I burst out laughing. "Not a word," he said, grabbing a napkin. "Too late." He grinned, and my heart did that stupid flipping thing again. After dinner, we walked down Main Street, past the general store and the old movie theater. "This place is like stepping back in time," he said. "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's grounding." He reached for my hand, lacing his fingers through mine. I didn't pull away.
The third date, I let her take the lead. She brought me to a farmer's market on the edge of town, where local vendors sold everything from fresh vegetables to handmade soaps. "This is what you do on Saturdays?" I asked, watching her examine a basket of strawberries. "Sometimes. It's nice. Simple." Simple. I realized I'd spent my entire life chasing complexity, bigger deals, more money, the next challenge. But this, walking through a farmer's market with LouAnn, listening to her haggle with a vendor over the price of tomatoes, this was better. "Try this," she said, holding out a piece of peach. I took it, and the sweetness exploded on my tongue. "Good? Amazing," she smiled, and I wanted to kiss her right there in the middle of the market. So I did. She laughed against my mouth, her hands coming up to grip my shirt. "People are staring," she whispered. "Let them."
The fourth date was a picnic. Alexander had planned it himself, complete with a basket, a blanket, and enough food to feed a small army. "Where'd you get all this?" I asked as he unpacked sandwiches, fruit, cheese, and wine. "Your grandmother helped." "Meemaw? She's a surprisingly good co-conspirator." I laughed. "You've charmed her." "I'm trying to charm you." "It's workin'." We ate and talked and watched the sun set over the lake, and I felt something shift inside me. I was falling for him. Not just attraction, not just chemistry. Love. Real, terrifying, all-consuming love. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I looked at him, this man who'd turned my life upside down, who'd driven all the way to Georgia just to apologize, who was sitting on a blanket with grass stains on his jeans and a smile on his face. "I'm thinking that maybe I was wrong," I said. About you, about us, about this being a bad idea." His eyes darkened. "And now?" "Now I think it might be the best idea ever." He set down his wine glass and pulled me into his lap. "LouAnn Morrison," he said, his voice rough. "You're going to ruin me." "Good." I kissed him, and this time there was no hesitation, no fear, just us.
The fifth date was supposed to be simple. Dinner at her grandmother's house. Nothing fancy, just the two of us and her family. But when I showed up with flowers for Dorothy and Bertie, LouAnn opened the door in a dress that made my brain short-circuit. It was soft and blue, the same color as her eyes, and it hugged her curves in a way that made me forget how to breathe. "You look—" I stopped, started again. "You're beautiful," she blushed. "Thank you." Dinner was loud and warm and chaotic, with Bertie telling embarrassing stories about LouAnn's childhood and Dorothy insisting I try thirds of everything. And through it all, LouAnn sat next to me, her hand resting on my knee under the table, her laughter filling the room. This, I realized, was what I'd been missing. Not wealth, not success. This. After dinner, I pulled her onto the porch. 5 dates, I said. 5 dates, she agreed. So, what's the verdict? She looked up at me, her blue eyes shining. I think you already know. Tell me anyway. She stepped closer, her hands resting on my chest. I love you, Alexander Reinhardt. And I think I have for a while now. My heart stopped. Say it again. I love you. I cupped her face in my hands and kissed her, pouring every ounce of feeling I had into it. I love you, I said against her lips. So much it scares me. She smiled. Good, because you're not getting rid of me now. I wouldn't dream of it.
Living under the same roof as Alexander for 2 weeks was torture. Sweet, delicious, maddening torture. Every morning, I'd come downstairs to find him in the kitchen, drinking coffee and talking to Mima like they'd been friends for years. Every night, we'd sit on the porch, talking until the stars came out, and every moment in between, I wanted him. It wasn't just physical, though Lord knows the physical attraction was there. It was everything. The way he listened when I talked, the way he laughed at Bertie's jokes, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the world. But we had an audience. Mima and Bertie were always around, watching us like hawks, and the guest room was right across the hall from mine. So we waited. We kissed long, heated kisses that left me breathless, but we didn't take it further. Not yet. On the last night before we were supposed to head back to Chicago, Alexander found me sitting on the porch swing, staring out at the fireflies. Can't sleep? He asked, too much on my mind. He sat down next to me, the swing creaking under his weight. Want to talk about it? I'm nervous. About what? Going back to Chicago, being your assistant again, figuring out how this works in the real world. He took my hand. We'll figure it out together. What if it's different there? What if we get back and everything falls apart? It won't. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But I know I love you. And I know I'm not letting you go. I looked at him, this man who'd surprised me at every turn, and felt my fears start to fade. Okay, I said softly. Okay? Let's go back to Chicago, together. He smiled and kissed me, slow and deep, until I forgot why I'd been worried in the first place.
We left Millford the next morning. Dorothy and Bertie hugged us both, Bertie giving me a stern warning about treating LouAnn right, Dorothy slipping a tin of cookies into my hands. You're good for her, Dorothy said, patting my cheek. Don't mess it up. I won't. The drive back to Chicago was long and quiet, LouAnn asleep in the passenger seat, her hand resting on my thigh. I thought about the past 2 weeks, the dates, the laughter, the way she'd looked at me when she'd said I love you. I'd come to Georgia to apologize. I was leaving with everything I'd ever wanted. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of a house just outside the city, big enough for a family with a yard and a garden and room to grow. LouAnn was inside arguing with the contractor about the color of the kitchen cabinets. I said, "Cream, not white," she called out. I smiled. This was my life now, our life. She came outside, her cheeks flushed, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. He's driving me crazy, she said. You're doing great. Am I? I pulled her into my arms. You're perfect. She looked up at me, her blue eyes shining. I love you, Mr. Reinhardt. I love you too, Mrs. Reinhardt. She smiled, and I kissed her, right there on the porch of the house we'd chosen together. The house where we'd build our life. The house where we'd write our story. And I knew without a doubt that this was just the beginning.
And this is where our story ends for today. If you enjoyed tagging along for this journey, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that this story is worth sharing, and it lets me know to create more content like this. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next chapter, subscribe and ring that bell. I've got more stories lined up that you definitely won't want to miss. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.